Hello and welcome, podcast listeners. My name is Ellen Stewart, and I am the Pushy Broad from the Bronx.
She's the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York. Follow her voice, a straight dog is nice. She's the pushy broad from the Bronx, oh yeah. Don't be surprised if you wanna listen twice. Make decisions, find the right choice. Know yourself better, find your own voice. It's okay if you need help today, cause everybody needs a little push. From the pushy broad from the Bronx, New York.
Welcome to my weekly podcast, with new episodes airing every Monday. I hope to inspire you, coach you, sometimes make you laugh, and give you the push moment you need to start thinking differently about the decisions you make in your life. The topic of this podcast, episode 28, is an interview with an empty nester. What is the empty nest syndrome, and why do some parents experience it? Well, according to the Mayo Clinic, empty nest syndrome isn't a clinical diagnosis. Instead, empty nest syndrome is a phenomenon in which parents experience feelings of sadness and loss when the last child leaves home. Although you might actively encourage your children to become independent, the experience of letting go can be rather painful and sad. You might find it difficult to suddenly have no children at home who need your care. You might miss being a part of your children's daily lives, as well as the constant companionship. You might also worry intensely about your child's safety and whether they'll be able to take care of themselves on their own. You might struggle with the transition if your last child leaves the nest a little earlier or later than you expected. If you have only one child, or strongly identify with your role as a parent, you might have a particularly difficult time adjusting to an empty nest. So what's the impact of empty nest syndrome? Well, according to the Mayo Clinic, in the past, research suggested that parents dealing with empty nest syndrome experience a profound sense of loss that might even make them vulnerable to depression or alcoholism or identity crisis or even marital conflicts. But recent studies suggest that an empty nest might even reduce work and family conflicts, can even provide parents with many other benefits. When the last child leaves home, parents have a new opportunity to reconnect with each other. They have an opportunity to improve the quality of their marriage, rekindle their interests, and maybe take time for what they previously might not have had time to do before. Here is my interview with Kris, who is an empty nester, and even though her children have left the nest quite some time ago, she does recall how she felt, and she's been kind enough to share those feelings with us today. Here is my interview with Kris. So I thought I would take this opportunity to talk to you about a topic that you know a lot about, and that's the topic of empty nesting. Mm-hmm. How would you describe empty nesting to me?
Oh, I think the pretty standard definition is when your adult children leave home, ostensibly to go to school or move out to do some training or just move out to live in their own place. They leave you, they no longer live under your roof, and depending on what they're doing, you're not financially supporting them anymore. If they're in college, then perhaps you are, but they no longer reside with you. So they are independent.
Right. So the little chicks leave the nest, or the little
chicks.
Birds leave the nest,
Exactly.
Which is how empty nesting got its start.
Right.
And how long ago has it been for you that your two grown sons have left the house?
Oh, golly. So it's been probably about 13 years since the oldest one left. And then the youngest one left 10 years ago.
And so how old were they when they left the house?
Both 18. When they went off to school, and they left, and I fully expected, as my experience had been, that they would, go to school for 9 months, and then they would come home and get a summer job and, be at home for the summer, and neither one of them did that. Once they left, they stayed gone. They stayed where they were and worked throughout the summer. And so once they left at 18, they really came home for short visits. That was it. So that was a bit of a shock.
So you expected that at 18 they wouldn't be ready to leave the nest yet?
No, it wasn't that. I thought
not permanently anyway.
Not permanently, exactly. I just thought that, like I said, I relied on my own. I was referring to my own experience where it was just, normal. You'd go home for the summer. And so was it interesting to me that they didn't feel compelled to do that, or it didn't logically seem like a smart idea to them, which is actually kind of a point of pride, because in both cases, they had gotten themselves jobs and they had secured an apartment and a place to live. And it wasn't that they didn't want to be home. It was like, look, why would I do that? I have a place to live and I have a job. So I'd have to stop for 3 months and then I have to start over. And that's not a smart thing. So whereas it was a bit of a shock and a little, I was emotionally a little bit like, you don't want to come home. Mm-hmm. But once I got over that, I'm like, well, that's smart thinking. That
they went out on their own.
They went out on their own,
and
I'm like,
way
right,
and wanted to stay,
and wanted to stay
and out on their own,
right, and saw the advantage of that, keeping that continuity and keeping the job, and so at the end of the day, that was actually very smart on their part.
Were there other couples around you that had the same situations, or did you find that your children were the exception rather than the rule? That they went out at 18 and they really didn't come back?
I felt at the time that mine were the exception.
What were you looking at? What were you seeing?
Well, let me think. Most of our friends who had kids our age, because we were older parents, a lot of the kids of couples that we knew, they stayed in Denver and they went to school in Denver, and maybe they were living at home while they went to school. So I think a lot of our contemporaries were really in a different situation, where both of our boys went out of state immediately. So they left Denver, they left, the state, they went far away.
Okay, so going far away kind of prepares them for staying far away.
Yes, exactly.
Not staying so close to the nest.
Right.
So your boys were 18, and you were, when you say older parents, how old were you?
Oh,
in your 40s, in your 50s?
I was in my, I'm trying to think. I had kids when I was 36 and...
So you're definitely in your 50s.
36 and 39, so I had to have been in my 50s, when this happened.
So you always, I guess, as an empty nester, have that feeling, because in order to define empty nester, it's the whole idea of my chicks are no longer in the nest.
Right.
And when my chicks are no longer in the nest, there is a feeling of emptiness.
I didn't experience that. Me personally, no, I didn't.
You just said to me before, you don't want to come home,
Well, yeah, it's kind of a double-edged sword. I mean, I thought that, so when they left and that the house was empty, I didn't register sadness. I didn't miss them. I didn't, whereas, I had other mother friends who were just like, talked to their kids every day and knew what they were doing all the time. I was like, it's time for you to go. It's been obvious for a year that it's time for you to go, and that's great. It would be unhealthy if you stayed. That would be the lesser choice. It wouldn't be good for you to stay. It's time for you to go on your own. So I was like really happy for them, and I really did believe down to, my hair roots that they were now living their own lives. I didn't need to know what their course schedule was. I didn't need to know, if they were eating in the dorm or whatever. I just fully believed they're going to take care of themselves.
When did you leave your parents' home?
At 18.
At 18.
Yes.
And you also got that from your mom and dad, the idea of them acknowledging your self-sufficiency.
Yes.
And the idea of them acknowledging and trusting your judgment.
Yes.
And giving the tools that you needed to do this independently at 18 years old.
Right.
Which is why you've passed both this on to your sons.
Exactly. I felt like I had really done everything I could to prepare them, and I felt that they were both pretty mature 18-year-old in many ways, not every way, but in many ways they were mature 18-year-old men.
And also, like you said, they were going on to the next thing. They were going on to college.
Yes.
It wasn't so much that you said, okay, you're 18 right now, no matter what you're doing, get out of the house.
Right, exactly.
Do you think you would have said that anyway? If it wasn't, if they weren't
going to
bound?
college? I think we might not have said get out of the house, but there would have been the conversation of like, now you're 18. It's time for you to go get a full-time job, and your rent will be, and it will be a different ball game now. You're of age, and you need to start contributing.
I see. So you wouldn't have said you don't necessarily have to leave the house,
right?
But you have to make an adult contribution.
Exactly.
Well, one of the previous podcasts I just did talked about how old people were today that were moving out, and the average age for a woman to move out of their house in today's world is 29 years old. Actually, 27 years old for a woman, 29 years old for a guy.
Wow.
Which is an amazing thing. So when we say 18, and that was how many years ago? That was... What, 10 years ago you said?
10 years ago for, yeah.
Between then and now, in many instances, in many ways, people have changed because it's, more difficult. And people are coming out after college, kids are coming out after school, and they're going back home.
Yeah.
Automatically going back home.
Right.
Because they just can't seem to make it.
What if you can solve the biggest problems in your life if you only knew how to think about them differently? Do you have trouble making decisions because you feel torn or paralyzed or simply afraid of making the wrong choice? Do you feel that maybe you could live a happier life, but you just don't know where to begin? Do you ever wonder why you have trouble connecting in relationships because you're always in conflict? If you could change the way you think about things, then your feelings and your actions would change as well. If you had the tools to change negative thoughts to positive thoughts, how different would your life be? How would thinking differently allow you to make healthy decisions, to energize your self-esteem, recharge your relationships, truly transform your life? My breakthrough program, Think Differently, Take Command of Your Life, will do just that. Learn more about it at pushybroadfromthebronx.com. If you're experiencing feelings of loss due to empty nest syndrome, then keep listening to my interview with Kris because she'll give you some great ideas to take a look at this from a healthy point of view.
Did your husband feel the same way as you about empty nesting?
He had more trouble with it than I did.
What kind of trouble did he have?
He worried about them a lot more than I did.
Did he always worry about them?
Yeah. Well, yes. But, like a lot of guys, he didn't always show it so much. But, yeah, I think he always worried. He always worried about different things than I did. But he...
what kinds of things did he worry about?
Oh, he just, he would worry about... I would worry about whether they were happy and they were fed and they were clothed and, they were safe and that kind of thing. And I think he worried more about, kind of their overall emotional well-being and were they standing on their feet and... were they okay? I mean, he would ask me, if 2 weeks had gone by, he would say, have you spoken to the boys? And I'm like, no. And he was like, well, don't you think you should maybe check in on them? I'm like, well, no news is good news. I'm fine.
That's very interesting that he said that. I mean, did he not think of reaching out to them himself?
I'm sure he did, but I think he always relied more on me for the better communication skills. I mean, that he had some of the typical father-son kind of, I want to say awkwardness. They always got along, but he always had more trouble communicating with them than I did.
Do you think he's changed over the years?
A little bit, but he still does the same thing, but not as frequently as when they first left home. So he will ask me. So we have one son who lives in, Denver not with us, in Denver. And then one who's across the country. And, some weeks will go by and he'll say to me, he goes, I think it'd be nice if you, invited Brendan to lunch just to see how he's doing.
And what do you say?
And I'm like, really? Why do you think, is there something going on? He goes, no, I not that I know of, but, you just seem to have a better way with him. And I think you should reach out. So to me, that's him saying he wants to reach out, but he puts it through me because they don't always, get along so well. Sometimes they have difficult conversations, not for any particular reason. They just, like I said, I think it's that father-son dynamic where sometimes they just knock heads without even trying to.
Yeah,
or realizing
in a father-son dynamic, it
Yeah.
can go into it. I don't know, maybe a teaching thing or a one-upmanship or whatever it is, or you should do it this way kind of thing.
You should do it this way.
You should do it this way, and that's how the conversation is approached.
Right.
So the son is somewhat on the defensive, or is going to know they're going to get some kind of lesson out of it.
Right.
So dad's going to teach me something, and maybe mom is going to nurture me, but dad's going to try to teach me something.
Yeah. Dad's going to tell me something. Mom's going to ask me questions.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
Right. Dad's going to tell me something. Mom's going to ask me questions. So either way, you've got the lecture or the interrogation.
Right. But somehow it's easier coming from mom because then then he gets to talk and tell me his his story.
Right. Right. And that's good. So do you ever say to John, maybe this is something you want to do? I know you're doing this because you think I'm better at it, but maybe, you want to try reaching out in a different way to your son?
Oh yeah. We've had that conversation. We've had that conversation. Yeah. And sometimes he does, but then other times he'll come back and go, yeah, but you
do it better.
You do it better. Yeah, you do it better. And when Brendan and I try to talk, we just he ends up getting mad, and it's not good.
Doesn't go as well.
Yeah, and that upsets him. I mean, he wants it.
It's nice that it upsets him because it shows that he cares, and it shows that he's trying to communicate on a different level, and he knows your husband knows his strengths and weaknesses.
Right.
And he puts in the A team to get it done, which is sometimes you know? The wife is the A team, or mom is the A team.
Right.
I want to put the A team in here to get the most out of this.
Exactly.
But you spend time with the two of you. Spend time with Brendan as well.
Absolutely.
And Brendan is how old now?
30.
And Lee is how old?
28.
28. And they're independent, and they've been independent for a while.
Yes.
So you said you've never suffered some of the pangs of empty nesting in terms of how you felt about the kids going, because you felt it was very natural and normal, and it was their time and they were ready.
Right.
How did it manifest itself at home, spending time now just you and your husband?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I know I had to have a change or an effect in our lives, but I have a hard time recalling specifically what that was like. I think in the whole time we're raising kids and during a relationship and stuff, we had always worked hard at, or not hard, but specifically at having our own time, or him and me time.
You arranged your own quality time.
Our own quality time.
And what did that look like when you said that? How did that manifest itself? What would that be?
Oh, it might be a specific date night without the kids, or occasionally once every couple of years we would actually go away for a weekend without the kids, or an overnight downtown. Just a little staycation that was just took a break, go out to dinner, go to a movie, just be with each other. It didn't happen all the time, but we made sure that it happened frequently enough that we maintained our relationship so that when the kids left, we still had a relationship with each other. We weren't one of those couples that you hear about where the kids leave and then all of a sudden you don't have anything to talk about. So that didn't happen to us. We were also both working full time and very committed to our respective professions. And so in a certain sense, having two fewer people, or when the last one left, one fewer person to worry about, to plan for, to track, to, make sure that the schedule was right and they had transport, all the stuff that goes with child raising, there was a deep level of relief. It's like all we have to worry about is ourselves now.
And you felt good about that?
Yeah, it was great.
No, that's a really good thing.
It was good. Yeah.
That's wonderful, because that makes it healthy when you begin to feel like you are missing something, or when you begin to feel guilty about that sense of relief. Yeah, that's when it's not so healthy.
I didn't broadcast that to a lot of my friends because it was not what other people were experiencing, and it seemed very, on a certain level, cold-hearted. And it wasn't. It was
healthy.
It was, I guess, it was healthy. I thought this is normal. This should be. They're off. They're doing their thing. I'm thrilled for them. I want to hear how they're doing, but I want to hear from them when they want to tell me. When they want to call me and share it, over the moon. I was so happy to hear from them. But I wasn't going to go after them to say, what are you doing and how you doing and blah, blah, blah. And personally, I can't speak for John, but personally too, there was a really big chunk of, I have my life back. You know, you have kids, it's the greatest thing but it's also 18 years of worrying and self-questioning, and am I doing it right? Am I doing it well enough? And are they okay? And are they going to be okay? And what's the long-term effect of the discipline that I just, handed? I mean, it's constant. And then they get to the age where they drive, and now you're just like worried every time they step foot out the door, and every time you hear them come in the wee hours, you're like, thank God. Okay, another night, we got them through. They're not arrested. They're not dead. They're not over. I mean, really, as a parent, these are all the things that you worry about every time they step out the door. So there was that parental stress that just went away. I mean, bad things could still happen, but somehow it wasn't going to be under my watch, which it sounds very selfish, but...
It's not selfish. It's the truth. When you are preoccupied watching something all the time or taking care of something all the time, and now you have honed it and nurtured it to grow and take care of itself, then you can shift your focus.
Right.
And shifting your focus does not mean caring less. It means allowing another person to care for themselves.
Right. I guess so.
And that's part of letting go. And that's what my affirmations bundle is all about. That free letting go cheat sheet where you talk about not holding on to something past the point of healthy.
Right.
Not only not holding on to them so that you're not nurturing them in a healthy way, but not taking care of yourself so that you still become preoccupied with what they're doing, even though they're no longer under your roof. Like you said, feeling guilty about feeling good about it because everybody around you is feeling like shit because everybody else is codependent around it and not letting go. And you're the one that's healthy. And you're the one that feels, oh my God, maybe I shouldn't say this so loud because I'm actually doing the happy dance here.
Yeah, right.
And that's the healthy way to go.
I'm glad to hear that.
That is definitely the healthy way to go. But it's very, very hard for a lot of parents. And because kids are leaving the house so much later than normal, it's harder and harder for them to leave.
Yeah.
Right? You throw them out early. You throw them out at legal age, most of the time in this country, which is 18 years old. They've been out for a long time. Your kids have been out for 10 and 12 years.
That's right.
If they were still living with you now, could you imagine that? And could you imagine how much harder it would be, not only for them to get out there and do what they need to do. There's, a whole bunch of what we call failure to launch adults and young adults. So much harder for you being so codependent and so dependent upon them to hold on to. You get caught in that web of it.
Yeah.
So that was a great thing to do. So do you think that your relationship with your husband improved after being empty nesters? You think you got as good as it was? Do you think that in many ways you got closer together?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. More time to do fun things and go out. I mean, so, now, we've been doing this for a while, but so we kind of, not immediately, but we kind of reinstituted the date night. But now instead of like going out to a movie, like once a week, we go to our favorite neighborhood bar and we have a cocktail and, happy hour dinner kind of thing. And that's our little standing thing. And just, being able to do things on spur of the moment. Like, let's go see a movie tonight because, thus and such just came out. Let's go see it. Great. Drop everything. Go. So, there's a freedom that returned to us. And also I think it went back to so we were together. So, we were older. We didn't get married at 19 and 22. We were in our 30s when we got married, and we'd already been together and lived together for 5 years before we had the first kid. So we had a really great time, and we were having a lot of fun. We lived in New York City. We were going out. We had friends. We had this whole life, which we remembered. You have kids. Your life changes in a good way, but you leave a lot of that behind. So I think that we were fairly successful, so that, they left and we kind of turned around and looked at each other and went, whew, just us again. Okay. But of course now we're, almost 20 years older, and, the things we do are different, and we're still both working, but there's still that element of just being a couple again, and how much fun that is.
Well, that's exactly what you said. First of all, you did marry older. So you had the time to be single, right? And then you met him a little bit later, and then you moved across the country with him, or in case he followed you across the country, because I know you're from the West Coast, and he's from the Midwest. And now you are together 5 years before children, so you remembered what it like to be a couple without children, which
right.
Many people don't have the advantage of. I mean, they have children right away, so they don't know how to nurture themselves as a couple. So you had that, and you remembered that, and you were able to go back to that when the time came. Do you find that being an empty nester did anything for your sex life? Increased it? Decreased it? Yes? No? The same?
No, it didn't. Didn't change it. Didn't change it.
Would you consider it always good?
Always good.
Always good. On a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being great, where would it be?
9.
9.
Yeah.
And it was always like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that there were strong feelings that way, and that, having children and raising children did not hinder that.
Right.
Which is something that sometimes it does, because couples feel that they're embarrassed or ashamed, or they don't have time, or they don't want to, they have to do it in secret or whatever it is. I mean, it's the truth.
Yeah, yeah. No.
And so that it decreases, and running around with kids decreases, sexual desire and all this and that. But you managed to maintain healthy sex life, which also carried you through when the kids empty nested. You were able to continuously rekindle that, which is a lot of good life lessons for parents who are having children. The things that one needs to sustain, right? Mm-hmm. Sustain a sex life and sustain all of those things. How did empty nesting affect you personally? Meaning, what parts of your personality reemerged, and did you find that you were reinventing yourself in certain ways? Did it give you personal freedoms to do certain things? How did it change, Kris?
Well, that's an interesting question. I never thought about it. Beyond that feeling that I already talked about of relief and kind of having my life back, I think that was probably the biggest thing. I mean, I remember consciously thinking, it's like, oh, God, it's like I only have to worry, and worry is probably a strong word. I only have to be concerned now with what I want to do. This is like being, in my 20s and my early 30s again. It's kind of like, all right, I remember how this felt. This feels good. This is,
Right, but in that theme, what did you want to do now that you felt you couldn't do before? Because you had children coming first.
Yeah.
What emerged for you, if anything, after they left, that you were able to cultivate now being an empty nester?
Probably, I don't know that there was so much on a real personal level. I could focus on my career more at that time. I thought that it would be a good idea to try and move up in my industry and in my company. And so I could focus on, instead of just getting the job done, I could actually be more professional and more proficient and spend more time, reading training materials and paying attention to, management resources that were given to me, things like that. I also, it also freed me up to travel more. So if, opportunities came through work, I could say yes or no at a drop of a hat. I didn't have to stop and think what the schedule was for 3 other people, and if I could, or if I was committed to, volunteer at a school function or something. So it gave me, I guess, the short answer to that is it allowed me to focus a lot more on my profession and my own career.
And what about your personal life? And what about your passions? Did you pursue any passions, any hobbies, any dreams, any explorations of desires?
No, I didn't. That didn't enter the picture.
Because you didn't feel like it?
Because I didn't.
Or because you didn't know what that would possibly be?
I really didn't have anything else that I wanted to pursue, and I was very focused on my job. I was very focused. That took most of my energy.
Okay, and you said you got to do the traveling that you wanted to do and move your career path in a certain direction.
Exactly.
Which you managed to accomplish.
Oh, by and large, yeah. I didn't go as far up into management as I originally thought I would, but I think my goals changed over time. So I got to a point where it's like, do I really want to do this?
Important.
Yeah, it became less important to me. As work life changed and as working for a corporation, kind of changed the landscape of what I wanted to do. I finally had reached the point where, it's like, I don't want to manage people anymore. I don't want direct reports. I just want to, do my piece and do it well. And I don't have to be a company man to do that. I can just do my piece and do it well.
Fit in a nice way. So you kind of had that work-life balance.
Yeah.
So if you were talking to a lot of women that were about to be empty nesters or going to be empty nesters and talk to them about what made it such an easy transition for you and how you felt about it, what are some of the things that you think people should take away about being an empty nester that are positive?
Oh, I think the first big thing is, look at all the positives and not the negatives. I mean, enjoy it. Enjoy the good things that come with it.
Okay, so that's a big thing.
Yeah, don't dwell on the negative. Don't dwell on what's missing. Dwell on what's arrived on your doorstep, so to speak.
Which again is the personal freedom.
Yeah, exactly. The personal freedom, the ability to now do, whatever it is you'd like to do, and if that means, doing nothing or taking up knitting because you never had like 2 hours, in a row to do that, that's great. Whatever it is, do it. Take the opportunity.
And it also gives you another chance to cultivate the relationship with your partner, right?
Absolutely.
To recultivate the relationship with your husband.
Exactly.
Gives you a chance if you want to reinvent yourself in any way, shape, or form, right? For those of empty nesters that spend their entire lives raising children and maybe gave up their career at one time or now going back into the career world, it gives them an opportunity to reinvent themselves and do those things. And I think the most important lesson that we're learning from you is that no matter how much you love your children, you cannot live your life for them.
Yeah, that was the other thing I was going to say is that you throughout it all, you have to be able to hang on to yourself.
And hang on to your life.
Hang on to your life. On some, whatever, on some level, you should never just let it all go and be completely consumed by your children. And your role as, parent. I think that's dangerous.
Right. So the best thing to do is what? In terms of summing it up to.
I think just to, I can only say what worked for me, but it's just that you always retain a kernel of the individual that you were before you had kids and, remind yourself why you married your partner or, chose your partner and the things you enjoy about them and about the relationship and, never turn your back on that. Because if you don't think about it, if you don't keep it somewhere in front of you at some level of your consciousness, then you are in danger of losing it entirely.
And losing yourself in the process.
And losing yourself in the process.
Great.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you doing this with me today. I know you felt a little strange about this.
It's much easier than I thought it would be.
But there are a lot of my clients out there that are empty nesters, and they really will begin to understand and appreciate what it's like to talk to one specifically.
Happy to be here.
Thank you very much, Kris.
This is Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, saying thanks for listening, and remember, everybody needs a little push.
From the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, New York.
The Pushy Broad from the Bronx would like to thank her production team: songwriter, composer, musician, and sound man Sam Goche, voice artist and announcer Taylor Goche. Oh, that's me! And thanks to collaborative writer and assistant production manager Richard Torres, virtual assistant and social media guru Kimberly Studdard, Special thanks to Laura Kravitz, production manager, and Susan Herman, collaborative writer. And a very special thanks to Love Love Studios in Brooklyn, for recording and mixing our music.
Here is disclaimer information we are required to produce.
Professional coaches provide an ongoing partnership designed to help clients produce fulfilling results in their personal and professional lives. Coaches help people improve their performances and enhance the quality of their lives. Coaching services received from certified life coach Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, are not offered as a substitute for professional mental health care or medical care, and are not intended to diagnose, treat, or cure any mental health or medical conditions. The Pushy Broad from the Bronx is not acting as a mental health counselor or a medical professional. All comments and ideas offered by Ellen Stewart, the Pushy Broad from the Bronx, are solely for the purpose of aiding her audience in achieving their goals, and hopefully keep you smiling in the process.